Today's webinar is sponsored by the Illuminating Engineering Society. Let's welcome the panelists. So, hi, my name is Shelley, Earp Aldridge, and I'm bidding and lighting specification and sales for 24 years now in the lighting industry. And so some of you out there may know me. Our agency themselves concentrates mostly in North and South Carolina. And I've served on the IES board, but just doing this as a visitor today. So we have Amanda Brooks here to my right. She is an engineer, RCDD certified, and the principal at Optima Engineering. Amanda has over 15 years of experience as an electrical engineer. Her leadership is strong work ethic and passion for problem solving is an integral part of Optima's continued success. She is a champion for collaboration and sharing ideas to create a more efficient, productive, rewarding, and enjoyable work environment. Whitney Shepard here across the table here is a project manager, interior designer with Klein Design, which most of us know about too. Whitney has nearly 10 years of interior design and project management experience of residential workspace and community projects. She works closely with architects and consultants to provide creative design solutions and a vibrant, comfortable, and productive spaces while staying on schedule and within the budget. We also have Rich O'Neill here across the room from us, and he has been in the distributing side of the business for now 25 years and started out in Raleigh, then moved up to Columbus, Ohio, was going to purchase a lighting agency there and decided that that was not what he wanted to do. And now he's back in North Carolina and specializes in multi-housing and many projects. He works for Capital Electric Center in Charlotte, North Carolina, and is very pivotal in this whole process of multi-housing. So it's nice to have a panel here to kind of go over. Okay, so as you see here, we have the electric, me as a lighting rep, myself, Shelley, Amanda as the electrical engineer. We have Whitney as the specifier here that deals with the developer. And then we have Rich here who has to bid the jobs. Not only that, has to hear with the VEing process of the entire project, which usually happens. So we were going to talk about trends in lighting, which is this is an organic conversation, and we're happy for you to jump in at any time. So first of all, I was just going to ask, have you noticed anything, and this could go code-wise too, any trends, and I say, you know, that have come out definitely since COVID. And I asked that only because in the beginning, everyone was like, touchless, did anything stick, or is it just basically gone back to
Nothing stuck. Like
back to business.
back to business. Touchless controls, touchless doors. That's all gone away, kind of, pretty much, because it all goes back to cost.
all goes back to cost? So that's where we go to. Okay.
UV, like even UV lighting. I mean, that was a hot topic for a while, but people weren't really asking for it.
So in the beginning, the developers were like, oh, we might need some UV lighting here, and
Yeah, it got brought up several times on existing projects and new projects, and they were asking kind of what do we need to do to rethink our design for COVID. And I think as the last few years have gone by, it's just settled back to cost and typical practice.
Okay. So we've not done that. So when it gets into lighting trends specifically, I guess most people would approach the multi-housing as almost a residential. So basically the units themselves become the residence, and then the amenities are out there. So the question would be, specifically when you're going to the units, when the developer comes to you, or when you go to get the bidding process, what is the most important thing about the units?
I mean, I think we think about our design in two separate buckets, units and amenities. Units is majority cost driven. A lot of developers, they're all different. So some developers come to us and they already have their standard items that they want to use in terms of lighting, plumbing, all of that. Standard manufacturers, we just kind of select designs within that line. And then a lot of them look to us and say, hey, what are you seeing in the market? We want to be the best. What do you recommend? And they kind of trust our decisions. But typically, we would run through the project, talk about what's needed in each space, and then from there, we would select those fixtures based on a kind of a budget.
If they come to you and they say, this is what we like to use, is it normally possibly a certain manufacturer that they've used many times, whether it be one of like the Seagulls, the Progresses, things like that, that's what they use in those, just like a national account.
Yes, so they
Or
would
a
have
national builder would
a
do.
relationship with whoever, and then we can try to push back on, something a little bit more decorative or something for whatever the design is, but in general, they're gonna want us to stick to that product line.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that goes, when it goes out to bid, a lot of times you probably have to get down to the basics, even if it's already on there and it's a national product line. Sometimes that can come back even more expensive, or more expensive than you planned on by where it's bidding. So you have to go back in there and start trying to reselect for the EC.
Look at that.
Oh, okay.
Then if they say, no, I want
For the EC and still come on, but they give you a budget, right? They say, okay, this is our budget. You have 1,000 of these units or 600 units, and even though they know what they wanted to pay, you're still getting things back that say, this is our budget. At that point, you just go through and start picking out ideas and get with people like, the designer or your lighting reps to try to get something within budget.
Pretty much.
Is it still a difficult thing?
Depends on the job. Some of the multifamily contractors are trying to budget the jobs themselves now. Because
Which is scary.
yeah, so what they were doing historically over the last couple of years is sending out these requests for bid to, let's just say, 6 or 7 lighting suppliers,
Mhm.
some local, some national. And many of them weren't able to submit the bids in time. So they started getting frustrated, not realizing that it was a full-time job just to bid their projects, with no real guarantee of return if you're even gonna get a job, get the job. So basically, they're trying to do their own lighting estimates in-house, where they're coming up with their own budget number. And then if they get a contract, that budget number is written into the contract, supposedly. And then they'll come back to somebody like me and say, here's the number we need to hit, send us a submittal with no real commitment. And I'm just shooting, at a moving target, not knowing really what they want. So it's tricky.
So when it comes to unit, which we know is we're gonna get it to the amenities too, that's usually probably 3 pendants, most likely over a bar.
2 to 3,
2 to 3 pendants over a bar, a ceiling fan, some under counter lighting, correct?
maybe.
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 So that gets beat a lot.
The under counter lighting does.
Yeah.
Which is so odd to me because. it's
Well,
just
when you got
awesome.
300 units.
Yeah, I get it. And then you have the ceiling fans would probably go in the bedrooms too, right?
Sometimes.
Right.
That's awesome.
But you don't put recessed or even the disc lights in the units, do you?
We
you
do, yes.
You do put the
Yes.
disc lights in
The
the
Yeah. that's kinda-
entryway,
right? So they
Yeah.
still have like some other kind of task lighting.
Yeah, the foyer kind of surface mount fixtures are no longer really, we're not
Mhm.
specifying those. It's really just the puck surface mounted lights as the general lighting. And then we've got under cabinet lighting, ceiling fans, vanity lights, pendant lights.
Interesting. Okay, so the puck lighting on there. So, and one of the things is I've talked to a couple of different designers during this period. When we spoke the other day, you're asked basically just mostly to do 3,000 K, right? Or that's what you all do.
That's our standard on all of our projects. It's just a good middle point. But it just depends. If haven't really had a lot of developers ask us to specify anything less. But if it fit the aesthetic of the area, the project, we
Right.
would. But not in units. Units, it's
Mhm.
pretty standard 3,000.
3,000 K, that makes sense. Do you anybody come back to you and say something different after it's gone up to bid?
no, 3,000 is,
Say,
and for what it's worth, in my opinion, the way to go.
right. You know, I think some designers, I guess, depending on the aesthetics of it, maybe just in the amenities in certain areas are doing 27K because of the, it makes you feel like a spa,
Yeah.
or that you're coming home from a day where you've been under harsh lights all day. It's a more comforting feel. So it's just the way,
Right.
an illusion that
Well,
goes in there.
some of those light fixtures are there because they're mostly decorative. A lot of them will only come at 27
Right.
under Kelvin if it's an integral LED.
Right. Really, the integral, you're seeing?
Yeah,
integral
so
LED
some of these decorative fixtures, yeah, they won't come in multiple color temperatures, depending on what it is. Now,
Okay,
if it's a decorative fixture, they can just screw in a lamp. That's another story. But
right. Well, I mean, that kind of gets me, so in the units, it's always gonna be a screw-in lamp unless you do the disc fixtures on the ceiling. So there was a time where some specifiers would come to me in the public areas, it's gonna get into your unit, I mean, down your corridors, and it most of the time is more of a decorative fixture there. So do you ever get pushed back on that for it not being an integrated LED? You know, integrated means it's built in there, do you get pushed back on that?
it is integrated.
The surface mount?
Not the surface mount on the
Oh.
decorative, because there's a lot of
Okay.
manufacturers that have integrated decorative, but there's a lot that just have an incandescent. So some people get concerned that the integrated won't last or won't be replaced, you know.
I think it just comes down to the two types of developers, ones that are immediately gonna sell and then ones that wanna have the property for long term. So you know, you can tell a difference when we're selecting, for example, the unit entry sconces. Some of them tend to be more functional and realistic about that and will request maybe an integrated LED. And then the others, we have more flexibility and, you know, there's not as much concern about maintenance because they're not gonna be the one
Maintaining.
maintaining it, yeah.
Right. Do you ever find that when you're doing the decorative fixtures, that, because do you ever have calculations that go over so that you want the decorative fixtures to be, I call it a down watt label. So I've been asked that before on decorative, did it come from the factory with a label, not candelabra, but an LED 9 watt or 13 watt at that point, so that it doesn't get messed up in the fill and go put an incandescent in it.
So we specify those mostly in the walk-up apartments that have a single clubhouse that's just a clubhouse by itself. So for energy code wise in these bigger towers, we don't, because it's not required to meet the energy code, because you're taking into account all the corridors and the sports spaces. So we don't have to do that for these big multifamily towers, but absolutely for the walk-ups that have these single clubhouses, the clubhouse is just a clubhouse. We will
Okay.
have to for some of the fixtures.
Right, you have to
Yeah.
have it down labeled.
Right.
Do you put that on the specification, so when it goes out, because I wonder if you don't
Should be
have
on
it
the-
done.
It
Yeah.
should be on the light fixture schedule.
On light fixture. So it doesn't just call out an LED, it actually calls out,
The wattage. Yeah.
like, does that get picked up? I mean, do you get asked for that, or do you see that on the schedule when you put it out for bid? Because I think sometimes if it's not spelled out correctly, down watt or DW or something, does it get missed?
I mean, I can't speak for anybody else,
Right.
but I look at that.
Right.
Because it, you know, if it's not in there, then that means I missed it. And if I'm being a job and I'm not at the right starting point, then I just cost myself even more money.
Absolutely. Okay, that makes sense.
So-
So,
We have a question from John. How important is it not just to specify fixtures from online sources, meaning not UL or ETL listed or very low quality or lumen outputs?
so we did see, so to explain that, in the beginning of COVID, we saw a whole bunch more of it, where specifiers, not necessarily you all, were getting on and just picking out all their decorative from like Wayfair or Wild Lighting. It wasn't really going to the manufacturer, just going on to that online retailer.
I will say that we try to always specify UL. I can't say that it's 100%, but if I catch it that it's not UL, then we will make an effort to change it.
And then to take that a step further, some of these owners, a lot of these developers are taking advantage of the Duke Energy rebate program. There's a whole modeling that goes through it, but as a requirement to get that rebate, they have to have either Energy Star or VLC listed light fixtures. So, I mean, and more developers are doing this, not just multifamily, office fit ups, office building, like more and more. So that is something to take note of.
I mean, it have to be Energy Star.
or DLC.
Mhm.
And then Dawn
Good.
had a follow-up question to that. So in commercial spaces, have we seen inspectors rip these out? No matter how good these look, if it burns down your building, you may never work again, right?
Right, so basically, you already know, when you've selected a fixture, or you probably already know from the submittal that's given, if it's online, you specifically look for it to see UL, say UL.
Yes.
UL or ETL.
Or E,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
I know that ETL is just as strong as.
So
UL.
I recently had a job in downtown Raleigh where the pendants, the executive pendants in the office were ETL listed, it was on the cut sheet. They showed up on the job, the canopy did not have the ETL sticker, the inspector would not pass it. I had to call the factory to get them to send new canopies with the ETL. I also got them to send a listing to it. So it is important, the inspectors are gonna look at that, and yes, they will not accept a job. I mean, and especially in Raleigh, that is something that, like, that's a big thing right now.
Well, and Durham's pretty strict too, I think, but, so you ETL though, that's come on pretty strong, a lot of companies do just ETL, don't even do UL.
Yeah, so it's ETL or UL. Actually, you can go, there's the state of North Carolina, there's a list of a couple of different ones that are acceptable.
Oh, okay, that are acceptable on there, okay.
Because this also goes to state construction as well, because those inspectors will look for it as well.
So I guess you've never had an experience where it's not on there and got passed, or, at the point, I guess that becomes the good engineer.
Yeah, and the engineers catch our mistakes and make sure that we're on track.
And I'm sure when you're going through a job and if you can't do as specified because of the fact that they've come back to you and said it's too high, you're automatically, I mean, I think the work with you automatically going and making sure everything's UL
Absolutely.
approved on that.
That was
So,
beat into me when I started at GE Supply. I mean, you work for a GE company and provide something that's not UL.
right,
Especially like, because a lot of these pendants will be fabric, like they're not. And those are the ones that inspectors really double check.
are they double checking to make sure that it's a commercial rated fabric?
No, that the fixture itself is UL or ETL.
Okay.
Yeah.
But is that an important thing? Because, you know, if you go and just pick out a fabric pendant that you would see on one of those online sites, that is not commercial rated fabric.
Well, I don't know about the fabric, but the fixture just needs to
Do
be
you have to do
ETL.
that? I mean, I know we've done custom ones in the past, but I think usually it's
I've,
always commercial rated.
I've never considered that, to be honest.
Okay, I mean, that's good. 'cause
You
we're
mean
always-
from like a washable standpoint, or you mean from a?
Fire.
Fire rating standard?
As long as the fixture is UL or ETL, that's what they're gonna look at.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I already went over the LED or the incandescent. I thought we'd have more questions because it's such a loose subject here. So you don't get pushed back if they don't mind using the incandescents in the corridors. It doesn't matter on the calculations if they do it as incandescent. If you do a screw-in LED, I'm sure that you're specifying that it be a 3000 K, right?
Mhm.
And this comes in because when you're having to supply the lamps, when you actually put things out to bid, it's not everything comes with the lamps in it. How do you go about securing or making sure that down the road, if it is a screw in, that they are putting in the same Kelvin or, you know, trying to keep it consistent? I know you're out of it, but in the beginning, do you have a purpose of saying, we like to use a certain type of lamp, or does it matter?
We'll spec the Kelvin temperature.
Right,
Sometimes they'll want an Edison lamp, and we'll put that on the schedule as well.
right,
If we have a clear shade or something, we will note the Edison type bulb, LED.
right.
But there's nothing labeled on it that says in the future, you need to make sure you use the same bulb.
Yeah.
So I guess that's just up to maintenance to make sure, deserve book, give it to them so that they, I mean,
We have the spec book, but no,
yeah,
not, the post occupancy is one thing that's severely lacking, I think, in the industry. Because we do a lot of renovations, and when we go, especially in corridors, you go down a corridor and you can see on those long corridors where the different color temperatures are.
right.
So yeah, that's,
They're probably just going and getting it. You know, then one thing is if they're just running to a big box store and buying it, sometimes can be a little bit different than if they're going to like, you know, your counter side of it, have a, maybe a little bit more better quality lamp.
I actually have a question for you. So if there is a specified integral LED DLC listed, Energy Star rated pendant,
Mhm.
and the contractor wants a VE and we give them an incandescent pendant with a DLC Energy Star rated LED lamp,
That counts.
it does count.
Mhm.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah, because I mean, even, because not all the fixtures that are gonna be specified are gonna be integral LEDs. So this, yes, the screw in, as long as it's DLC and Energy Star.
Okay,
Oh, so that doesn't come down to the picture, that's good to know.
But they're gonna put that,
because that just
Lamp in,
came
but-
up for me and I kind of took some, maybe I should have asked the question, but I said,
Oh,
that
but
qualifies.
they're gonna put that lamp in.
Yes, well, I provided the links.
Right.
I guess like just during the inspection, because afterwards, no one knows really what goes in.
Right.
Okay. That's kind of loose. So we got to the branding part of this. Style wise, I mean, I guess it gets into designs and stuff, we were talking about this earlier, so corridor lighting, which is huge because you have to be able to see. You do mostly surface mounts. all
Surface mount, and then we always have a unit entry sconce, almost always. And then if budget allows, we'll have elevator lobby, decorative lighting. That's it.
And most of your surface mounts are the little flat disc now.
Yes, and some of our projects, we do more like a surface mounted decorative light, but I think a lot of our projects are a little bit more modern and clean, and so we kind of tend towards to move away from those fixtures.
On the engineering side of it, because we probably like have some other specifiers on there. What's important for you to be able to get when you're doing it, just to get the submittals up front, when you're gonna do your schedules?
What's the most important thing to
That
get?
you're getting from her,
Yeah, to get all their fixtures.
right? So how often do you, this is kind of cool, and this is, at least I thought about this, like, how often do you actually walk into a project at the end and you got exactly what you specified? Has that ever happened?
So it also depends on the relationship with the contractor and the developer. Most of the time, we are reviewing all the submittals. So if it is VE, we know about it, we've approved it, but there are a lot of times where the developer maybe will take on more of a CA and they'll choose and switch things out. And if they don't know the whole picture of the design, we'll walk in and see something that just doesn't work. But it was kind of, we were skipped in that review process. So it happens,
Right,
but
but I guess the final buck stops there. We do have a question. Why are building owners not fully embracing integrated LED luminaires? I mean, this is probably cost.
yeah, cost.
100% cost. So they're not looking at the labor savings of whenever they go out or because we all know the little screen LEDs don't last as long. They're not looking at labor. They're not looking at that like the university does or something on the maintenance side of it.
No.
But that goes back to that a lot of people are building these multi-housings to sell within the first 2 years.
Right.
So it's all about 100% how it looks.
But then we also get hired when they sell the property by the new owners to go in and adjust things. So we see both sides of it. A lot of our renovation projects, we do have to kind of work with those parameters, but not on these big new construction multifamily deals.
Okay. So have you ever bid a job that went exactly how it was supposed to? Have you ever never come back to you and said, okay, we have to change this and change
So
that?
it is a regional, it depends on the market. When I was in Columbus running the agency, no. But in Charlotte, there are a lot of jobs that go 100% per spec on the commercial side.
Right.
On the multifamily, mixed use side, I would say maybe on the amenities per spec, and then all the back of house, all the corridor and all the other fixtures, they always try to be. So
So it doesn't sound to me, the question's a good question, because it definitely is taken into perspective when you are doing like a university type job or something, but it doesn't seem that it works in this, so. Let's see. Sorry, it's not right, so. Ceiling fans, okay, so ceiling fans, let's get to that. So they're in every unit. sometimes multiple in the units, maybe it's in the bedroom. So we asked this the other day, and I think that you've never been asked it. Is it important that it be DC or AC? Because, you know, when it comes down and someone's proposing or VEing that ceiling fan with a $50 ceiling fan, sometimes I would say that that is probably just an AC ceiling fan. There's still, and just, do you get the specs back on that to approve it?
We will, but
It's really not a.
I wouldn't discriminate it against AC or DC. Do you look at that?
We will look at the wattage, but I mean, it always goes back to cost.
Right.
So
That's why the subject is hard, because I feel like the entire thing is just
They-
cost.
they want to go to Lowe's to buy like a Harbor Breeze $40 contractor fan, is essentially what they want to do.
Do you think it goes also back to the theory of just like in universities when they do multi-housing and they put something in there, they know it's just not gonna last? I mean, it's probably gonna be changed out or,
A lot of the times, unfortunately.
but style is important these days, right? I mean, like, even if you were trying to do it, and try to save, the contractors ask you to save something. If you've got a modern looking fan there and we come in with what we call a typical builder fan, it's just as basic can be. I mean, you're probably not gonna, you're gonna want the style still.
Correct.
Cause that's, I just find there's a lot of companies out there that are hard to get within that style, and you probably know more of them, but want that look, but yeah, it can get in that, I'm saying 50, because I've seen some of them want to be as low as $50.
Oh, yeah.
Right. I would say that probably gets really important too, when you probably are dealing with a national, if they're already telling you in the units that they deal with this brand or this brand, some of those type brands already have their fans in them.
Yeah.
So that could do it.
Yeah, so Shelley, without talking about brand specific, what is the ideal fixture that multifamily building owners want? Other than cost, obviously, but can you talk to that a little?
For a fan or just a light in general?
For a fan or
Lights, fixtures was the question. So luminaires, lights, fixtures.
They want the slim puck that mounts in the junction box everywhere.
That's true. We have that on every single
Yeah.
project.
And why is that? You were explaining that earlier, because of the ceilings and the cost. and-
The fire rated ceilings, the cost to install, they just mount in the junction box, they put a putty pad on the back. Plus, I mean, depending on what kind of building it is, how tall it is, you have all these other utilities running through that ceiling, so. And then you got joists and beams and everything else, so at the end of the day, they want this device that sticks in this junction box, and then if it goes out, they just rip it out and put a new one in.
Yeah.
They don't gotta figure out if it's the driver or the LEDs. And they've actually look a lot better than they used to, so they almost look like a downlight, some of them.
Yeah,
I'm not so used to them that I think they look nice now. I just don't know if that's because I've used them so much, but
Sure.
it's definitely used everywhere.
How about condos? Is the criteria different for condos?
Ooh,
We don't do.
we don't do
condos.
condos, but I can tell you yes, because condos.
There's a lot of, legal issues with
Yeah.
condos, and it's kind of a risk for architecture firms
And engineers.
and to be involved in condo projects. So I know at least at Klein Design, we don't really pursue that type of work.
But I will say this, people who are in condos can usually spend more money, and they'll actually, a lot of these people will come in when they buy the condo and totally redo stuff. So that's a whole nother story. They'll do the whole lighting control system, AV upgrades. But we don't do condos.
Do you think new condos are even being done here in North Carolina? Maybe more in Charlotte.
yeah, I do quite a few. What I see in condos is they'll specify a can with a trim, and they'll V it to one of those downlights that's like a two-piece driver with a little remote cable and then the retaining clips.
Yeah. The retrofit, yeah.
And that sometimes works because it has a little bit more of a regress trim with a baffle, or it looks a little bit more like a downlight from the floor. But yeah,
So, I mean, it's a good question, Christine. Did we answer that really how you wanted that, or? Or are you
That was-
thinking?
That question was from Aperna, so we'll have to get a thumbs up, thumbs down from
Sorry.
Aperna.
Did we answer that, what you were looking for?
She's good. She gave me a thumbs up.
Okay, good. All right, let's see. God, I feel like we've just covered so much. I will go into the ceiling fans. Do you see a trend right now? I guess if we're gonna talk trends in lighting, we talked enough about what I call the, utilitarian. I mean, a recess can or a disc is gonna be that, but do you see trends in lighting being more modern in the units and clean? Or are you seeing very, very traditional still, or just trends?
I would say somewhere in the middle. I think there was a big push for modern, and then it was very cold and unwelcoming. And so now, a lot of times our goal is to make it as cozy and comfortable as possible. And so we're using a lot of organic materials like rattan, the wooded beads. I mean, that's a big trend. We're
I
not
feel
doing
like brass and gold are back everywhere.
They
I don't
are
think I have a
brass,
lot.
gold, and black.
Yeah, and mixing metal, like mixing, including your plumbing fixtures, hardware, and everything else. So,
We mix a lot of metals, and we try to convince clients that's okay.
Mhm.
We'll see what we think about it in 5 years. But, and then in the amenity spaces especially, we're not doing a lot of slimline LED type fixtures. We're really doing a lot of decorative pendants, a lot of layering. So we have specific areas we'll do like use accent wall lighting or wall sconces in a banquette or over a bar. You know, we're doing a lot of kind of little niche areas to kind of make it feel individualistic, I guess.
Is that coming out also because when we went into this pandemic, so many people were at home and you can stay in an apartment or whatever all day long, but they needed to get out and go into the public area. So now there's a demand to make it all in one area where you can go down and work, and then also.
Actually, in the beginning, we were doing these huge kind of open gathering lounge / co-working spaces. And then all the amenities were shut down for a good chunk of time. And then when they reopened, they had to find ways to divide the spaces so that people could have their own area. And so it's not really encouraging people to kind of, hey, come have a party of 50 people. It's more like, hey, bring your friend over and sit in this little nook.
Okay,
And then here's another nook where someone else is having fun and you're socially distant. So we try to do a lot of that type of design.
okay. And so you said that most of the multi-housings aren't even doing any type of controls in the entire.
No, so your lighting controls in the units are all switches. We're actually doing a job right now. We had to delete a bunch of the three-way switches, like in some of the foyers and corridors, just to save money. The corridors, it's all the lights stay on. Many spaces, it's aux sensors. So part of the Duke rebate program, they'll look at this and they'll make a recommendation to the owners, because the corridor lighting, there's usually a ton of lights. So even if they would, and none of these developers are putting aux sensors in corridors, they're just not doing it. But what they could do is alternate switching half the lights on and off to help, with energy savings. But the payback on that is so little right now, just because of LEDs. Plus there's some issues too with like, hey, if you switch these lights off for so long, then leave all the other lights on the whole time, like the degradation of the LEDs, like you'll see that over, in 2 or 3 years. So you'll walk into a corridor and one light will look different than the other because one's on all the time, one's being switched off. So it's less is more, cheap. Like I'm not trying to say cheap, but and easy. And here's the other thing with any sort of control system, any owner, they want to make sure that control system is going to be available in 5 years.
Right.
So that's the other thing. So yeah, so you have aux sensors, switches for the most part.
I do have one lead project,
It's multifamily.
multifamily tower.
Wow, that's exciting. So are y'all doing daylighting?
Yeah. So, I mean, we're still in schematics, but we'll definitely, so I can't really speak
Right.
to what the outcome will be, and we've talked about those options, so we'll see what happens.
Do you, with LEED being always so prominent, are you seeing any demand for the well?
So Fitwell is coming. So, there's several buildings, I think, already in Raleigh that are certified Fitwell. The other thing, Well's coming too, but we'll see how that goes. But the biggest thing that people are right now looking for is Wired Scored, which is a technology certification. So, but that's, I mean, that's sort of out of our hands. And that all depends on what the owner wants to put in the building.
Right.
But Fitwell, like 301 Hillsborough is Fitwell certified. I believe that MTX will be Fitwell.
On that Fitwell certification, does that have anything to do with, since we're talking about lighting, or is it,
Some of it does.
some of it does?
Mhm.
So that's amazing. So when you know that it's gonna be Fitwell, and then you're actually having to go out and bid that job and being asked to make it cheaper, does it become more important that they know that that is getting that certification?
Mhm. And I think 5 Mangum,
Okay.
Durham is Fitwell.
Okay,
But Fitwell's a different certification than Well. It doesn't take into account, I think, lighting as much as Well does.
okay,
So,
well,
but you will see more and more of that.
of the well and the
Of
lighting.
Fitwell and, yeah.
Yeah, because, I feel like for a long time, people have been talking about the lighting, and myopic and all that, so I think that that's coming in the future at least.
We had another question, if you don't mind, Shelley. The question was on outdoor environments. So are you seeing more design requests for outdoor environments given the recent pandemic and for mixed use buildings and apartments? So kind of lumped all together.
Courtyard spaces are like a huge thing, and then they will actually put more money into that space than, yeah, especially the lighting and the functionality, and you could talk more about that.
No, it's being requested a ton. Our outdoor square footage is sometimes larger than our amenity
Mhm.
interior square footage. So, pool, outdoor eating areas, co-working areas, for sure, are a big deal.
Are you doing, when you bring in outdoors, I know for a while, everyone's like jumped on the bandwagon and said, okay, we're gonna put balconies on everything.
Balconies are big in Raleigh.
Yeah, so balconies, and a lot of the times the wraparound buildings are on the parking deck so that you can drive into whatever level you live in and just walk into your space without having to get on the elevator. That is something that did really come out of the pandemic.
And did that stick? 'Cause I remember talking about that.
Some of it has, and some of the buildings we've done have changed design because of that.
So they want to be able to drive into the parking deck, you go to your floor.
Yeah, like
And
take
get
your
off.
groceries, not get on an elevator and just walk onto, yeah. Yeah, the balconies are still a big thing. Or den or like future office space or.
So dens were a big conversation when it happened because of so much work from home. But again, I think they add cost.
Yeah.
Feels so bad that I keep saying that, but dens are expensive. And then I don't know if there's as much return on rent for a den as for a 3-bedroom versus, it's.
Okay,
So I think it was a big conversation, but I'm not sure how many we actually, and they'd rather squeeze as many units as possible into a floor plan versus having larger units with dens. It's 2-bedroom, so a 2-bedroom with a den and 2-bedroom. The rent's not that different, but the amount of square footage you're taking up is different, so
okay.
they'd rather get more 2-bedrooms.
Oh. Okay, that makes sense. So when you're doing, I'm going back to that. So when you're going and you're doing a project like that, are you definitely taking into account that on the outside of it, you're seeing that they'll put the money there and they'll stick with what they're doing on the outside?
Oh, yeah, and so a lot of these courtyard and outside spaces, they'll actually bring in lighting designers to do that portion
That
of it.
part.
Like, that's the one portion, yeah, that they'll spend money.
Oh, that's interesting. So will they also bring in like the landscape architects to make it all?
Oh, yeah.
That's that first impression of how it.
Right.
And those are the areas that I typically will strongly discourage VEs
On that,
because they're very specific.
right?
Vega, Structura.
Yeah.
Hess, or, any,
Structura is a big one.
the Structura is very big right now. With the cantilever
Mhm.
type pendant in the middle of the courtyard.
Right. Well, I guess it makes sense. People weren't if you're working from home, get outside. If not, you can have areas where people can gather.
Mhm.
Perfect. 15 minutes. So on the design part of it, so we've covered yours, because this is a very loose subject. We knew there was a lot of questions to it. We're going back to that more traditional, not quite so cold and modern. You think Art Deco is kind of going away in the,
I don't want to say we're like not modern. I think it's just a different take on modern. It's not as cold and stark. It's more that residential feel. So I wouldn't say we're going back, but it's definitely just kind of shifting. And I don't think people want cold white spaces. They want warmth. They want, cozy.
So I guess what, I think I asked you this, I don't know if I already asked you this, because I thought we would have a lot more interaction on this one, but, have you, I think I've asked you, went into a space and thought that you approved something and just walked in and said that this is never what I approved, and people are just,
I'd be pissed.
yeah, I know you'd be pissed, but does it happen?
It's happened, but not on bigger multifamily jobs. It's usually with smaller construction firms or like contractors who are.
Mhm.
No, most of our big projects, the contractors know how to do a submittal process and get approval from everybody, and it's just mostly on smaller jobs.
Do you think that most of the future is gonna be the workload play, it's gonna continue like that? Like I see most of it being workload play in this area.
Mhm.
I don't know what's going on in Charlotte down there. Does that seem to be what's going on down there too?
There's gonna be a lot of vertical.
But a lot of vertical,
Yeah.
well, we're running out of land, right?
Yeah.
Yep. I don't know, it just still amazes me how it can be so upper end and higher end in Charlotte, and then Raleigh, our capital, for some reason, we always budget it, but. So, I mean, we are at 15 minutes for, I mean, this was a very loose subject. I feel like there could be some more questions out there on this, or maybe a question we didn't touch. Anyone? You want to bring up something?
Well, one of the things that I think is coming up, everything was 100% about price. And now it's really, that's the second question. The first question is lead times and what's available.
Oh, yeah.
That's true.
So I am trying to partner with people that I know can, just finding a cheap price is not acceptable anymore if it's not going to meet the demand of the project schedule, So I'm trying to figure that out, of how I can use that to my advantage so that, maybe it'll be a little bit more expensive, but it's available.
Sure.
But it's also quality.
Mhm.
So
I know we feel like as lead times have gotten longer, it feels like our project schedules are getting shorter.
Mhm.
And so a lot of our developers are asking us to go out to bid with 50% DD set, which has none of our final specifications. We haven't worked out all the details. There are a lot of blanks. And so, they're going out to bid, and you kind of mentioned this too, like they're kind of coming up with their own numbers. And then we're having to come back after we get that number. We're tied in. So then we have to cater our design based on that 50% DD set. So it's almost like we're doing we try to get ahead of that. So we're like, oh, we need to put more detail into our DD sets. Well, then all of a sudden we have an 18-week schedule that's now most of our work has to happen in 6 weeks. So, and then also on that same
You
tail
guys still
end,
gotta coordinate with us.
still have to coordinate with
Structural.
them. You still have to do your bid, and then we also have to consider lead time. So it's exasperating, and I think that's our biggest issue that we see in the market is just scheduling and trying to fit in all this influx of work that we
Right.
have and get on the. I don't know if all developers got together and were like, let's shorten all projects schedules, but
Right.
it kind of feels like that sometimes.
So we have a question in here. Do you spec L70 or L90 values, or just accept the E-Star and DLC? Well, yeah, will that cover it
Yeah, we don't spec L70 or L90, just Energy Star or DLC.
in the multi-housing? Yeah.
Mhm.
And then says, do you see many specs for dual CCT or dim warm sources?
We don't really, I mean, even in the amenity, we don't dim the warm. And the dual CCT, I know some of the slim form fixtures do come with that, but I mean, we don't spec a lot of that.
You just find that they just dim them if they need them. It's not.
I mean, they're gonna set it like 3,000 Kelvin.
Yeah. You know, is warranty on fixtures being asked for in multi-using building projects or so? What is it? I mean, in in universities, it's huge. Your warranty's got to be there and you've got to show it.
I mean, we specify it, and I believe our specs are 5 years.
5 years.
I don't know if it's like, because once we're done with the project, I mean, we might get a call or two afterwards, but I mean,
Yeah,
it's not like state construction whatsoever. We don't do a year warranty walkthrough.
right.
Yeah.
Do you find that has been a contingency with you where something's gone on and then all of a sudden warranties come up?
They'll
and it's
probably
not
get a call
covered?
before we will.
Yeah, and then,
Yeah, I mean, again, I agree, any kind of university, any kind of work like that, it's more of a big deal. On the type of stuff that I do, it hardly is ever even asked. And in reality, there are times where contractors will order replacements for stuff that failed that they could have gotten a warranty replacement.
right,
Because they didn't even think of it and somebody didn't ask the question.
right. I mean, this person just. Are you getting any requests for American made or try to do American made? Anything? I feel like that was a
We'll start
little.
with one lead project, we'll have to consider that, if we wanna go for that credit. But no, not in lighting.
Yeah, no.
We do think about that in some of our finishes, but no, not really lighting.
Wow. So warranties, yeah, I would say that most of the time they probably run out and just get it at the end of it. I think the biggest problem too on your lead times, and you probably find this is the contractor just doesn't order early enough. Do you find that? All of a sudden they order it and then they need it and not, the world knows there's a supply chain and then.
Well, what I find is that from my vantage point, there's a lot of games that are played on the GC side with the owner.
Oh yeah, there's
A lot of smoke and mirrors, and it always comes down to the lighting. Because they can kind of identify, it seems like they can figure most everything else out. So, that's where I feel, I have projects right now that I've been working on that I've submitted like 7 times that I just found out the specifier hasn't even seen the submittal. So who's looking at it?
I guess that's where the developer gets involved.
I don't know, because I don't see it.
It's interesting to me, I think there's a lot going on right now between what the EC is telling the supplier versus what the EC is telling the GC, what the GC is telling the owner. I'll just say it like that.
Yeah, politically correct. No, I mean, we've had projects, even commercial projects, where the GC gets involved with lighting and then it's trying to spec the whole package even before they have a EC on board. And then they're like, we're gonna go buy these fixtures. You can't buy the fixtures without the electrical contractor. But they're trying to procure this stuff earlier. Yeah, there's stuff that happens.
Well, there are projects in Charlotte where the owner is procuring the fixtures
Mhm.
through an entity of some sort. Around the electrical, and the electrical's not happy with that at all.
So are you seeing more and more multifamily electrical contractors buying from y'all versus buying direct through whoever? Or does it depend on the projects?
I don't see, most of them are purchased through us because they don't want to deal with the headache of all the logistics involved and everything else that goes with it. But what I occasionally see is where not the general, but the owner will supply the fixtures through some other supplier.
Any other questions? Because we are getting towards the end of it. I hope that this was a very loose topic, hard because it changes and rolls a little bit. It's pretty basic, but If there are any more questions, we have the people here to answer that.
Yep, Shelley, you just got one from going back to 2700 Kelvin versus 3000 Kelvin discussion. Clarify transitioning to 3000 K. Most residential lamps and residential grade downlights have been traditionally 2700 Kelvin.
Okay, well, that's what we mark it on. I feel like that 3000 Kelvin was adopted a while back, just because it was pretty consistent. We really hadn't perfected 27K. But you're not getting asked for that at all, are you?
No.
Yeah. But I mean, I think so there are some designers out there who will do 2700
Yes.
Kelvin in the units.
Yeah, but they're being asked to do that.
Yeah,
They're
they're
being
being
asked to do that, and I feel like maybe if that developer that they're working with is going for more of this luxury feel, I don't know.
Yeah. But for
Right,
most of-
they're
yeah,
very
most of ours-
specific about it. It has to say 27.
Most of ours
Okay.
are 3000.
So I think that comes with the developer then. Anything else? That was a good one there. I like 27.
It
Too
definitely
orangey.
changes the.
Well, it's a
look.
bad LED, it's
Yeah.
orangey, but there's some really good 27s out there that do a nice job on it.
It definitely, well, but
Mhm.
affect how our
Color
finishes look.
Yeah. Well, we thank you all for having us on here. I think that we pretty much covered what you may want. We didn't really talk about emergencies. We talked briefly on it, but it's just a numbers game with it. But it sounds like,
It's a balance. It's trying to please the client, trying to please an end user with, what they're looking for, and all inexpensively.
Yeah, cost effectively.
right.
All right, thank you again for joining us today, and we're thankful for all of our continuing members and your participation, of course, in today's webinar. Keep an eye on your email to sign up for our next education webinar in March. So we hope you enjoy the rest of your day.